Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Anfield Index, your home of all the latest and greatest up-to-date Liverpool news during an international break. Now, I've been fortunate enough that I enjoy the international break. I'm an England fan, but the same can't go for everyone. So finally, for a large portion of the fan base, football is coming back this weekend, and more specifically, Liverpool taking on Manchester United. Huge game with massive ramifications for the season, and there's no one better to talk about all the latest Liverpool news and that upcoming match than the one and only David Lynch. David, thank you so much for coming onto the channel again, man, for another episode of Media Matters. First and foremost, I mean, how you doing, man? All good?
Yeah, good. Thank you. I quite enjoy the international breaks as well. I know a lot of people don't, but it's because the season is so relentless and it's kind of 2 games a week all the time, 2 press conferences a week, and just ruthless like that. I actually do like the slower pace of the international breaks. I'm feeling relaxed, but I'm ready for the real football to come back as well, I suppose.
I mean, well, yeah, that's just it. It's the real football, so to speak. It's the one that gets us the most stressed and the most sort of the most anticipation for the season. And Liverpool playing Manchester United's got a lot of things going into it that could really, really affect it. Obviously, Amarim's future is up in the air for United. That is what it is. There's no different there. It's been a year in charge for him now, but for Liverpool, there's a few fresh injury concerns, and one in particular that you touched on your website, davidlynchlfc.co.uk, is the potential news of Ryan Gravenberch. Now, obviously, he went off early during the Netherlands 4-0 win over Finland on Sunday, and he was replaced by Reinders, Man City midfielder, at halftime. Since then, there's been discussions over that he's had some minor hamstring problems, as you touched on here at the bottom, and that they just didn't want to take any risk with that. Now, obviously, for Liverpool, this would represent a major blow to their upcoming game against United and the season as a whole. What can you tell us, if anything, regarding this Ryan Gravenberch injury? Has there been any fresh updates surrounding it, or are we still a little bit in the dark of it?
Yeah, so my understanding is that he is okay. It's not even, I know the manager, Ronald Koeman, kind of described it as like he has a minor issue, but it's not really even been described to me as something like that. It was more kind of a consideration of, right, we're 3-0 up at half-time. We've got a young player here who plays a lot of football for his club and also, of course, for his country. Let's just look after him in this situation and make sure he's okay. And so they did that. And so nice to see that, by the way, because I think, Liverpool do work hard, the hierarchy, to have good relations with the international coaches and sporting directors of, federations as well, to kind of manage situations like this. So I think this decision was taken with, one eye on kind of protecting Gravenberch. So the expectation is, as I understand it from speaking to people yesterday, is that he'll come back to Liverpool, he'll be fully fit, should be absolutely straight into training, and no concerns about his availability for the Manchester United game, which I think is, encouraging, because he's a hugely important player and a bit of a unique profile in that midfield. So they absolutely need him for that game.
Well, it's interesting as well that you mentioned there about the international collaboration with Liverpool, given, I mean, you go a few years ago, and there was that whole debacle where Gravenberch said no to the international call-up, which sparked Ronald Koeman going off on a tirade. So it's nice to see how things have really progressed from that stage. And you're absolutely right in terms of what Ryan Gravenberch brings to this Liverpool team. Like, as an overall player, he's one of the most progressive, attack-minded players in Liverpool's team currently, not just in terms of his work sort of on the ball, but his work off the ball. Like, we go to the stats here. You can see there the passes attempted in the top 14% for Premier League midfielders, top 10% for pass completion. Progressive carries is in the top 10%, progressive successful take-ons, top 14%. And it's really a showcase of just how integral he is for this Liverpool team going forward. But even if he is coming back to full training, and even if he is there's no major concern there, do you think there's potentially a world where going into this United game, we could see a sort of approach with him like we saw with McAllister, where he's rested, maybe he doesn't start the match, comes on later on? Or do you expect against this team, even though they're in poor form, you need Gravenberch to start straight away and really make a major impact at the beginning?
I think he's got to start, and I think he will start, because I think he's such a kind of, like I say, a unique profile in there. I just don't think you can kind of trust, even against a United side that's not started the season particularly well, anybody else you'd really trust at the base of that midfield, because there are some really good players in there, that mix they've got there. But obviously Florian Wirtz is never going to play deeper. I think Endo showed in his cameo against Chelsea, he's just not progressive enough on the ball, and that causes you issues in build-up, which Liverpool have already got issues there anyway. Szoboszlai, maybe not that defensive nous, even if he's got the leg. McAllister, yes, the defensive nous, but definitely not the legs at times. And again, he's not in the greatest of form at the moment. So, Gravenberch, for me, I think he's cemented himself in kind of recent, over the last year or so, really, is kind of, he's in that elite bracket of Liverpool players that when you pull them out, you haven't really got a direct replacement for. And, Liverpool have managed the squad in that way in the past. So, Mo Salah's never really had a good backup, has he? Because he's always been nailed on for 50 games a season. Virgil van Dijk, very similar. And I think Gravenberch's in that bracket now of kind of, he just demands to be played for 50 plus games a season. And I know that workload hurt him a little bit last season, but I think over time you become used to it. And I think he'll be absolutely ready to take that on this season. And of course, it absolutely helps if he's getting little rests here and there, even if it's just 45 minutes on international duty. Yeah. It all helps for a long season, because I just don't think Liverpool can afford to start 90% of games without him, really.
Well, it's interesting as well, because you touched on there, like, he's such a unique player in terms of Liverpool's system. But this season, we're seeing much more of, I think, a very attack-minded approach from him. We saw it against Atletico Madrid, we saw it against Newcastle, where there's a nice interchange between him or the other midfielders alongside him. Say, if he pushes forwards, Szoboszlai's dropping deeper. Do you prefer to see Gravenberch in that kind of role, so to speak, or do you feel as though he is someone who perhaps should just, his main role and responsibility should be cover the defensive frailties that are in the squad currently, maybe drop in between the centre-backs? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I like the idea of it, him getting forward, because I think if you've got a player who can pull off the finish that he did against Everton a few weeks back, you don't want to just shackle them to being in the number 6 position. If you've got that level of quality in your midfield, then the rotations that help him get forward are definitely worthwhile. And I also think, the inspiration for Slot for doing this, and this being the approach now, is very much what he saw against PSG last season, how their midfield three were able to rotate, and that kind of led to situations where nobody knew who was marking who, and it was easy for someone to run off the back of another midfielder. And so he wants something similar. What I would say is, to be implementing a system like that, which is very fluid and it needs understanding, all while you're going through, putting together almost a new team, because you've completely changed your squad and overhauled it over the summer, that creates difficulties, because Liverpool, that fluidity, that understanding isn't quite there yet, and it leads to disjointedness. It leads to being a little bit vulnerable on the counter at times, because nobody kind of knows where the teammates are supposed to be, and nobody, sometimes, maybe all 3 midfielders will end up in the box thinking, oh, I'm the one who's rotating forward. So you're just getting those teething issues at the moment. So whether this was the right time to do it, that's maybe up for debate. But I think in the long term, I think it's a good idea, because you've got 3 very kind of versatile midfielders who can all do bits and bobs. And I think with Gravenberch, to like I say, that quality that he's got in forward positions, you don't want to kind of take that out of his game, and you want to make use of it. So that's a really clever way of doing it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I agree with the sentiment as well that Gravenberch, he's too integral to the way in which we play to drop him. But I do expect against United, he'll probably come off. I doubt he'll play the full 90, but we've seen stranger things happen. And it brings us on nicely, actually, to another player who, on international duty, has gone away injured. We're still sort of slightly in the lurch of it. It is Ibrahima Konate. Now, of course, Ibu's had a very mixed bag of a season. Started off very poorly in the first couple of matches, Newcastle in particular, he was poor. Then he had a world-class performance against Arsenal. Then he's dipped again. He's been a subject of heavy criticism. And he did, of course, leave the France national team early due to a bit of a knock. It was reported the other day. He's returned to Liverpool for treatment, and Benjamin Pavard had been called up to replace him. I mean, with regards to Ibu's injury, I haven't heard much myself personally, but is there a sort of feeling of, because it's Ibu, because of the injury issues he's had in the past, there's a bit of a worry with this one more so than there was for a Ryan Gravenberch knock?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I unfortunately don't have any kind of information on this one other than that he's come back to Liverpool. They're going to have a look at him. They may be leaning on the side of optimism with it, that it's not anything really severe, which is why he went to international duty in the first place. But you've got to say, at the moment, with the information we have available, he feels like a little bit of a doubt for maybe the Manchester United game, but we will see. Obviously, the manager will give us an update on that on Friday, I'm sure. But yeah, it is a concern because obviously we know Liverpool are short in that position now. That the next cab off the rank is Joe Gomez, but he is incredibly injury prone in recent seasons, so that's a massive worry. And yeah, obviously Giovanni Leone isn't there now because he's got that long-term injury. So yeah, there's just no getting away from the fact that it is a major concern, and you just hope it's a minor one, that he can be back for United. They're just erring on the side of caution rather than playing him in international games, because you just need him there. And really, Liverpool need him to be fit for the entire season because they just don't have the options to back it up. They didn't sign Mark Gay, so they just look a little bit light at centre-half at the moment. So, yeah, we don't know, but fingers crossed it's nothing serious and he can be fit for the United game.
I mean, what have you made of the season so far? Now, obviously, Gomez had a poor game against Southampton in the League Cup. To be expected, he's just come back. He was playing alongside a new defender for the club, and it was his passing range, his mobility. He didn't look quite up to speed yet. But there's calls for people saying, right, Konate has been really poor. We can't afford a bad result against United. Maybe we need to bring Gomez in. Would you personally be persevering with the Konate conundrum, or would you maybe be looking at Gomez, who, like you said, while injury prone, could perhaps offer a little bit of extra energy compared to what Konate is providing for us at the moment?
Well, my thinking on Konate is just kind of the heat around the debate is just over the top for me. And I think it all does tie into the contract. I mean, nobody's questioning, for example, Alexis McAllister's commitment to Liverpool on the basis of his poor performances. Yeah, and he isn't playing well at the moment. And, Mo Salah's not being at his best. Again, nobody's saying that's anything to do with anything contractual. Sometimes players are just in poor form. And I think it's exacerbated when the team as a whole is not clicking and you're working through all this turnover, and that's been an issue for Liverpool. So I think there's too big of a spotlight on Konate and the reasons behind him not playing well. I think he's just in a poor run, and the fact that the team is in a poor run is not helping him out. So for me, I think any time he's fit, he's part of Liverpool's best defensive partnership or centre-back partnership, and so he should play. And I think this United game is no different. And I think once the team settles down and everybody's kind of those relationships are built and the team is more stable, I think you'll see a better Konate. And the only way to kind of get there is to just push through sometimes. And so, for me, he absolutely has to be on the team sheet, particularly because I think United will take a bit of a direct approach as well, as they did last season with some success. Yeah. So you need a defender who's good in the air and can deal with that. So, I back Konate to kind of play through this and get back to his best. And so for me at the moment, he's a bit of a no-brainer pick alongside Virgil if, of course, he is fit.
And you're spot on there as well with the United approach, because this isn't a United with a Xerxes and a Højbjerg who, while physically imposing, so to speak, they're not the fastest of players. They don't like to play off the shoulder of the last man as often. But now against an Mbeumo, Cunha, Dalot, these type of players who are very fast and very mobile, you need someone like Konate who has that pace about him to be able to keep up. And like you touched on there, in the air, Konate is second to none in so many different areas. Like the big issue for him has been this area, like defensive, his interceptions. He's in the bottom 29%, but only the top 46% for tackles and interceptions. He's made 0.32 errors per 90. But it's the in possession where he's really, really still putting out good numbers. And also his aerial win rate, 4 aerials won per match, only losing 1.28, which is 75.8%. And against a United team who, while they have sort of lacked that physicality at points this season and even last season, they always seem to be up for it in these type of matches. And Rio Ferdinand made a really good point the other day of saying, look, the main reason Liverpool fans are disgruntled with Konate's performance is because of the Real Madrid links like we had with Trent last season. And like you said there, that does play a big part in it. Are you getting more concerned that the fact that, look, Liverpool's contract talks, we'll touch on that shortly, there hasn't been like sort of significant updates in recent weeks. It just feels very much like Liverpool are going to offer a contract, but nothing's been cemented in stone for him. Is there worry behind the scenes maybe that this contract doesn't get done as such, or is it sort of like a Van Dijk Salah situation from last season?
I'm not feeling any worry at the moment. The fact is, it's so hard to talk about these things because if you show any optimism, then people suggest that then it's a done deal and he's going to sign. And if you show any negativity about it, it's never going to happen. He's off to Real Madrid. And the fact is, and I know people don't want to accept this sometimes, but it's just nowhere at the moment. Like, the talks are ongoing. It may be resolved and it might not. I speak to people on Konate's side of things, and they are very much kind of shooting down the idea that he's agreed anything with Real Madrid. So, so that there's still hope on that side, and that he's still definitely open to talking with Liverpool. People at Liverpool are not shutting down the idea that they're talking to him, and it's still ongoing. So there's still capacity for it to be resolved, but equally, there's capacity for him to run down his contract and leave on a free, and it's just very, very hard to say which way it will go at the moment. There's still a lot of time left, and this is it. It can either be a Trent Alexander-Arnold situation or a Van Dijk and a Salah situation. But both possibilities are open at the moment. People always want to come down early and they want to say, yeah, Trent had completely made his mind up 5 years ago, and that Van Dijk and Salah were always going to stay. But at various points in those negotiations, Salah was more out than in, as he said in his own words. So, it did get resolved eventually, but this is the nature of contract negotiation. And I just think it's very, very hard to offer any certainty at the moment. And if he does eventually leave on a free, I know people will say he was always going to do that, but that's not the situation at the moment. All possibilities are on the table. So we just kind of have to wait and see, as frustrating that is. And maybe as a supporter base, not get too frustrated if he's playing poorly and always blame it on the contract. He can just, footballers can have poor runs of form. They can have bad games. So I don't think getting on anybody's back helps anything at all. And he's been a very, very good player for Liverpool down the years. And the hope is that he gets back to his best form in the coming weeks. And if he can do, then Liverpool will be a bit more of a formidable prospect, I think.
Yeah, and he does deserve credit for the fact of, like, last season, I've made this point several times, I think going into that Real Madrid game, he was arguably our best centre-back up until that stage. He was phenomenal. He was covering for some of Van Dijk's sort of, not physical issues, but getting up to speed with the league at the time, just coming back off pre-season. He was great in the air, as he still is this season. And he's not sort of thrown his toys out the pram. Mascherano did it, where he was having issues where he was saying, look, I'm not going to play against Man City because I want to leave. You had the McManaman issue. You had Michael Owen. You've had so many players in the past who have ran their contracts down or have demanded moves away. Konate is getting on with it. But what seems to be the sort of the issue around it at all? I know that's the question everyone's asking, but there's been reports of it's money. There's been reports of it's the plan of the club going forward, which I think this summer's sort of proven what the plan is. It's pretty much blow everyone out the water. What seems to be the major stumbling block at the moment with regards to getting this contract completed?
Yep, same one as it always is, really, which is, as you say, it's money. Is that the player's got a valuation that he thinks he's worth, and the club maybe at the moment don't agree with that. Now, to be honest, that's the starting point of every single contract negotiation. It's very rare that they'd sit down and Liverpool would say, we're going to offer you this, and they'll go, yep, that's absolutely fine, and everybody shakes hands and it gets done very smoothly. So, it's always like this, and part of the reason Mo Salah's contract negotiations dragged on for so long last season is because he wanted a certain amount. Liverpool maybe didn't want to go to that amount, and then they end up compromising in the end. And we'll see whether that was the right decision or not over the course of this season. But yeah, it's always about the money, really. It's particularly the player of this age. It's not about contract length or anything like that. So we just wait to see who kind of blinks first. Whether Konate is thinking, I can leverage Real Madrid interests and use that to get a better deal. I might actually fancy going to Madrid as well. Whether Liverpool say, okay, we'll meet you halfway and we'll come up to this amount. That's the kind of situation that's being played out at the moment. And I'd say the problem for Liverpool is in this situation is that Real Madrid's interest is clearly genuine, and but Konate might just think, look, it's not just that I can get a bumper payday at Real Madrid, but I can get that, and I can also go and try something new. I've won the Premier League here at Liverpool, and go to a new league and try that out. Nicer climate. Madrid's not a bad place to live either. So that is an option. And what Liverpool have got to do is stop these situations developing because the temptation's too great once you get to the final year of your contract to maybe have a look out there and see what's there and think, well, that seems a really nice alternative. Not that I necessarily desperately want to leave Liverpool, but got a really good option here in a club who will take me on a free. So Liverpool have got to stop that developing by getting contracts sorted earlier. And I think that's one of the big hangovers from the period where it was kind of a revolving door on the sporting directors on the sporting director's office, really. This is a consequence of it, that they've ended up in this situation. So, if they learn anything from these situations that they've had recently, it's to, once you get anywhere near 2 years, you've got to